Wow, my life was really, really a dramatic story. I remember when I was 3 years old, in the back seat of the car, of my dad and my mom, and I was there with my brother. And I remember singing to this Natalie Cole song, and the range was real high, and my mother thought the radio was on, and here I am singing "Love, Love, Together, Love," that old Natalie Cole song, and my mother was like, "What's that? Is that the radio?" And she turns the radio down, and she was like, "That's my baby singing." And I'm just in my own world. I'm just going in. And my brother was like, "Yeah, that's been him singing for a minute." As I said before, my dad was a blues musician who cultivated his art in a small town called Shelby, Mississippi, that's right outside of Clarksdale. And my mother grew up in a small town called Matson, Mississippi, which is like 3 miles outside of Clarksdale. The epiphany didn't really happen until we went to Clarksdale. And I'm gonna take these shades off so y'all get a little choked up when it comes to this story, because this is actually when I fell in love with music. I had an uncle that was a jazz saxophonist, and he had come down, and we were in choir rehearsal. And at this time, they didn't have like a youth choir or junior choir, we used to call it back in the day. And I remember my mother being pegged as a director of the choir. And my grandmother, she heard me singing along with the choir, and she was like, "This child can sing." And then my little shyness came in at that time. And my aunt, rest her soul, Nola Gates, she came over and she had a quarter. She said, here a quarter. Get up there and sing." So I said, "I'm not the first paid gig." I was like, "A quarter? What are you talking about, man? Yeah, let's go." So I rushed up there, and I was 5 years old, and they had to put me on a stool, and I sat up. And I remember my first solo was a song called "Yesterday," "Today and Tomorrow," and I started singing, and yesterday, and they was like, "He sound like a grown man." This is the way that I approached the song, and they noticed, and I guess that was the integrating of the adult choir, because of that moment. They made a junior choir, and from that day on, I guess that's when music began to be my first love. I'm not ashamed to tell the in school. I went to an elementary school called Dublin Elementary School, and in that gymnasium there, I remember Miss Shaw, who was our chorus teacher. She's the only white lady in that whole school, teaching those black kids how to sing, and that was the joy, I think, of my whole entire first grade, was being selected for the choir. And Miss Shaw heard me singing in the rest of the choir, and she was like, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Uh-oh," because I got lost into the music, and in that part of it, I forgot that we were singing in the choir, that kind of thing. So she is like, I thought she was coming to discipline me. I was like, she said, "Who is that?" And they said, "That's him." And I was like, "Uh-oh." So in that moment, she said, "Come here, I got a song for you to sing." And she, pulled me out and gave me that song. It was a George Washington play. We were doing. I'll never forget it. Drop some tea in the bottom of the sea kind of thing. And there was the song called I Wonder. And when I played the young George Washington coming up, and young black George Washington. And that was, I took it so seriously. And she gave me the song. And she says, I'm going to put you at the forefront. We're going to move that song. The song was originally supposed to be in the middle of the play. And she's like, we're going to open with that. And we opened with that, and then the superintendent of the school came and saw it, and he says, I want this to go all over the county. We just, we'll bus you up in this. So that was my first literal tour, getting on the bus and going from school to school. And I remember when we were in Clarksdale, I remember on the small farm that my granddad farmed, and it was hard work. I mean, I learned a lot about myself in hard work, and that ability that if you work hard and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, there's nothing in this world that you cannot accomplish and nothing you can't be. And your dreams and your aspirations are all at your fingertips. You work hard, you're gonna get it. Nobody's gonna stop you but yourself. So in that, I remember the cotton fields. Oh my, I'm probably the youngest man, oldest man I know in middle ground that has ever chopped cotton. You just, as you go, you don't find people that have that experience before. And I remember seeing people in the cotton fields chopping in those heat, humidity, heat waves, I call them. It just felt like hell, literally, because it was just that hot. You can't see it now, but this is where I grew up. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, we came back to Mississippi. This town is called Matson, Mississippi. And Matson was a plantation town. It was, at one time, it was, of course, slaves. And then the slaves, after Reconstruction in Mississippi, here started living on the plantations, because what they would do when they were given the 40 acres and a mule, they would come and they would have their houses and build here, and then white people in the area would come back and make them sign deeds over, so like commissaries. So they would own all the stores, so you didn't own anything, so you had to succumb to signing deeds, because these guys couldn't read and write, and so they would swindle them out of their property. You owe me this or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So we're gonna have to take a little bit of your land, and they didn't know they could get a lawyer and fight that. So, so they, just succumbed to it and allowed their land to be absorbed. But my grandfather, great-great-grandfather, went to the courthouse, and he had it put in all of his children's names. So if you weren't a Poindexter, you can't even sell it to this day. And so this is why he had that property there that we filmed on is the only property that's still standing to this day, out of all those folks that had sharecroppers and that had land. And all of that land around us had been swindled from black. It was all black owned. My grandfather, in lieu of that, was looked up to. He was a gentleman. He was like the old saying, old E.F. Hutton commercials back in the day. When he talks, everybody listened. He was the pillar of this community. And when he spoke, people listened. And I remember being so proud to be his grandson. And, I was like, I may not be nobody, but I'm Will Poindexter's grandson. Rest his soul. But I remember just the love and the camaraderie. And, you would walk down the street, and it was a crime if you didn't speak to your neighbors. You just didn't do that. If that got back to home, you was getting a whooping. Big time. They did not play. People respected and loved each other. I remember my grandmother, she'd cook, and then she'd cook extra, because if somebody was walking down the road, she would say, hey, have you eaten yet? Come on in here, take this with you. And she would feed anybody that would walk down that road, and people knew if they were hungry, they could get a meal at the Poindexter's place. When I say love, life, and spirituality, and the musical movement of it. All of this is incorporated in every note, in every tone, in every scrawl, and every thing that I add to the music is a portion of what I experienced here as foundational in the Mississippi Delta and on this property. So many things I learned here. My granddaddy, because we would wonder, and he left it open for us because he wanted us to imagine doing anything that we wanted to do. And I never thought that a little country boy from Timbuktu, Mississippi could ever have traveled the world and have done some of the things that I had the opportunity to do in my life, and now tell the story of from whence it came. My celebrities from Clarksville, my goodness, Nate Dogg, W.C. Handy, my goodness, so many people. Tina Turner came through Clarksville or got their starts in Clarksville, which is why the crossroads is so prolific in this. I remember the old saying the old people used to say what the crossroads meant, and that's why there was a battle. My grandmother used to say, well, you know, you got to be in between because your dad is the devil and your mama is the Lord. I don't know. Fall somewhere in between. So thus here we go, love, life, and spirituality. The whole crossover, R&B, soul, and gospel mix-up is what you're getting. And it all stems back from the old saying or belief around the crossroads. So it was meant that musicians, Muddy Waters, different people would have their epiphanies in Clarksville, and they would go to offer their souls or sell their souls to the devil at the crossroads in return for fortune and fame. Because you got to remember, Clarksville is a very impoverished place. So, you know, you got musicians popping up, and it was just like being an NFL player. Now, this is my way out. Music is my way out, because now people are starting to evaluate. And, you know, you have people turning big stars like a Tina Turner review, and things are starting happening. And Nate Dogg and all these people, and to this day, it is believed that if you have some kind of, you know, consortium, if you will, at the crossroads, that you would, you know, achieve fame and fortune. Whether it's true or not, a lot of people have come out of Clarksville, Mississippi, you know, that have made it in this business. So I don't feel slighted by that history of growing up in that town. I think that part of the culture has made me the type of musician that I am now. And yeah, Clarksville.
It was a small town,
the home of the blues,
down in Clarksdale, Mississippi, where the people would see and the money was taken.
And I remember my aunt. She lived right across the street from Fresno High, and I would jump the fence and run the track every morning to get myself ready. And I remember all my friends talking about, you know, where they were going, and, you know, oh, I heard you got the big scholarship to UCLA, which I did, full scholarship to go to UCLA Film School. And I remember going, I'm not gonna tell anybody really what's going on. So I had snuck away to the recruiter's office to the U.S. Army and enlisted in the U.S. Army. Because you gotta understand, I was the type of child that I was coming into my own, and I didn't want to be one of those people. I had talent, bam, he went to college, he developed it, and then bam, he's at Hollywood doing this. I wanted to experience life, and I thought the only way I'm going to do that is to get away from my parents and to get away from, you know, the house and get away from Fresno. Everybody, you know, like UCLA, I could 3 hours, I can come right back home. You know what I'm saying? That kind of, my parents were going to expect that of me, and I knew that in my mind. And I was like, I wanted this to be about me and discovering life, love, life, spirituality. All of that had to be developed, going from a young man to manhood and trying to discover, like every other person that graduates high school, who am I? Not only as a person, but who am I as an artist? What do I have to offer? And if I personally, because I put every ounce of my spirit and my soul into my music, I wanted to have something to offer people other than, I'm a good musician. Okay, this is what my dad's part of the equation came in. Blues music is about real things that happen to people in dire poverty. And there are quite a bit of, of things that happen. I have a book that I'm writing on called Bigger Than Me. I want to plug it in right now. And it'll be more intricately involved with things that I went through in my personal life, more so than as an artist. But all those things leading up, because like I said, all of those things make you who you are. And so I thought the commercial Be All You Can Be was out. This is the way for me to be all I can be in my own sense of the word. So here I am, boot camp, the whole nine. And mind you, all my brothers, including my grandfather, had served in the military. So it was nothing new to me. They had already told me, oh, they're going to do this, do that. So by the time I got to basic training, it was boring. I was like, okay, this is where they come out yelling. This is where you haul your, I was already in place. So I kind of went through the motions already knowing what phases and everything. So I just floated through. But here's the kicker. None of them became war veterans. And we were in the middle of the Gulf War. And here I am being hauled off the war from from basic training. So at that time, I had to tell my parents, I didn't go to UCLA. I'm graduating from the military boot camp, getting ready to go off the war. Oh my Lord, why did I do it that way? My mother answered the phone. And she's like, where you at? So I'm about to graduate. She says, already? You just started school? I said, no, I didn't go to UCLA. I enlisted in the military. She's like, oh my God, it's a war. Oh my Lord, they're going to kill my baby. she's going in. My grandmother grabs the phone. She's like, calm down, calm down. She's like, God got this, baby. You know what I mean? And I felt so bad because I'm like, I didn't tell anybody. But in my mind, I knew, number one, that I would survive this because I always felt I had this deeper calling on life. And this, I was like, God didn't put me on this earth with all this talent just to waste it and get shot in the military. No. So here I am going through that. They were like, my mother took it really hard. My dad was like, oh, hey, just make sure you come back. You know what I'm saying? Because my dad knew, because it was reminiscent of how he was. He grew up with 10 children that he was the elder of, and hated it because he was a musician. And he never, until he got grown and all of them were grown, got to do what he wanted to do. So I get it. He began, blues offered him an opportunity to be free, a free spirit, to, have as many women and whatever, and revel and do whatever he wanted to do. And there was no checks and balances on it, he thought. And so, just like him, that rebel spirit was embedded in me somehow. I didn't know why. I just knew I had to be free and I had to do music, that kind of thing. So I went to, I got stationed on the front line after basic training at AIT. And I remember getting off the plane, and the guy got on the plane. He was like, this is war. And nobody's going to come back. Don't even look to come back. That's why they didn't give y'all uniforms. And literally they didn't, which is what ABC and NBC, all the major networks did report, that they had anticipated the first 30-some thousand soldiers being casualties because, Saddam Hussein was supposed to have all this big army and, in all of this. And we were supposed to, the first, couple of thousand were counted, literally counted as casualties. We weren't coming back, and they knew it. But didn't work out that way, apparently. And that's why I began. That was the beginning of my professional and my spiritual journey. At that time, I remember a pivotal moment musically in my life where I used to be they call the human radio. Oh, go get Private Perryman. Yeah, that guy can sing. And a lot of these guys were, away from their spouses, and, we were at war. And you had to absorb what they call noise and light discipline. So you had to be very quiet at night. Obvious reasons, you're at war. You want the enemy. In the desert, there's no trees, so sound carries. And so they were like, man, I wish I could, hear a Freddie Jackson tune or something, you know what I'm saying? And I would sing to the guys, Freddie Jackson, Luther Vandross, whatever they wanted to hear. Man, sing, boom, man, that remind me of my lady. Boom, boom, boom. And so then it connected with me as a musician. Wow, I have something to offer. I finally found myself. I finally found the value in the art. It is giving back to people. It is touching somebody millions of miles away from their loved one to say, I'm coming home. I have hope. Thus, Hang On Tonight that I wrote on this album, it's about, hey, I ain't gonna work overtime. I've been working all this time, and I'm fighting really to get back to my spouse, to get back to my girl, to get back to my whomever that I love. I'm fighting it, to get back to it. And so that's what inspired me to write from that moment. And I remember writing the song, What Will I Do? And What Will I Do was a ballad that I wrote in the middle of the desert. So I wanted to start writing on my own. And really, when I was teaching myself to write from my experiences. And I remember singing that song, Since You've Been Gone, My Life Has Changed. And guys would come over from different tents, white, black, Chinese, everybody. And I'm like, man, them gangs can sing. Man, and they would build a campfire, and you're going to have a singer. And that was my first USO show within the middle of the desert, singing to other troops there. And I remember just the faces of everybody, how they would listen, and just the value of what they got out of it, that piece. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to record this song one day. Thus, 400 and something published works later. It's one of those. But that really, if you really rewind, that was the pivotal moment into my professional career, because I knew from then on, I'd listened to military, but I was like, this is just to get what I need to get to become the man that I needed to become and the artist that I needed to develop into. And after the war was over, I remember going to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, being stationed there, and where Berklee College of Music is. And here we are developing again, and I met this wonderful young producer, Chevalier Coleman, who lives here in Georgia, who is actually going to be working on my next project together. So all of these years, 20 some odd years later, we're coming together to do music. And he was the first person that showed me the ropes of the studio, how to write, how to become a writer that's fearless when you write. Because when I first started, I was very hard on myself. There's things that I was scared to try, and I was basically being the type of artist that just copied everybody else that was out, and I wasn't developing any flavor myself. A difference between a Whitney Houston and an artist that just sings. She's Whitney Houston. She knows who she is. She's defined her art. She has a specific style of vocal that she gives, and she's incomparable because of that. She may not, can sing higher notes like Mariah Carey, but she's significantly coined in her own style and flavor. And that was the thing that I was learning in this whole process there, how to put all of those elements, the hurt, the pain, the experience of life, into art, into music, and to deliver where people believed it, and people could feel what I was feeling in the music. And so that's where I learned how to do that at Berklee College of Music, going with Tom, and then enrolling myself to learn studio arts and that kind of thing. And I have big admiration for engineers, because that's truly an art form out of itself. It's always evolving, and there's so many, because at Berklee what they would teach us is the wiring first. Then you would go to the part that you wanted to learn. And I was like, man, who does this? It's literally engineering. It really is. It takes a lot to do that. And so big ups to them. But it was important that I knew, because if you don't know something, you don't respect it. And that taught me how to respect everybody intricately in the whole arts process. from the engineer to mixing, mastering sessions, to cameras, to art, to all of it. And these are the things that made people like Michael Jackson and Prince who they are and who they were as musicians and artists. And this is, again, what makes a legacy, you know, and those are the things, like I said, if you don't bring that to the stage, to the forefront, and a lot of people are being introduced to Enin Perryman as the art form, but this is why this was important, to show the audience what I bring to my music so they understand the value of what they're purchasing. It's not just I'm buying this record for $1 or whatever, or streaming this record for $1, but I'm streaming somebody's soul. I'm streaming somebody's experience. Love, life, and spirituality are all combined into this man's soul and music. And so thus, this is why I was the first, if you will, for me developing myself and becoming the professional. Now, from just a musician, from a young boy, from a person experiencing music and trying to develop a spirit of excellence, to actually giving the audience a spirit of excellence that he had learned in craft. And so after that military stint there, I created my first demo. Didn't know what I was going to do with it. I got a video, I got a demo. Yeah, my first record. And I recorded an album, which is still on the market right now, called Pray. And oh my gosh, I remember Pray on that album. I was exotic looking too, because that was my art thing going on. I was this young, kind of guy. And so I moved out to Frankfurt, Germany. I was still in the military, and I was getting ready to get out of the military. I was, 3 years into my career, and I got into the last year, and I was trying to figure out, okay, now this is a turning point. What do I do from here on? And I remember going with, or she wants me to call her real name, a young lady I had met whose husband was in the military by the name of Mindy Lee. And at this time, she was, Ed McMahon was hosting a show called Star Search. And she had won there and came over to Europe and got signed to Sony Records as Paris Red. Big ups to Paris. And Paris was like she was my first musical buddy that I knew in the music industry, that kind of thing. And she was like, she invited her over to her house, and she was telling me about an audition for a group called Snap. And I know everybody remembers Travis and Cole and Milli Vanilli and all of these people. They're always signed to a small label that was owned by a mogul called Frank Farian. Frank Farian was like he was like Clive Davis, but he owned the MTV Europe. So you couldn't get anything anywhere without going through Frank. And at that time, she was assigned to him, and she introduced me to him. And so I went into the auditions and everything, and I started singing, because they were looking for somebody different, because I remember the artist they had was Penny Ford, who was the lead singer, and she left, and they were looking for somebody to fill that position. And Paris' voice was too light, and it was like, she's more like a Beyonce, would be for now, back then, and they wanted somebody really gritty and hard, and they was like, well, let's try Mel. And I came in and auditioned, and it was like, all right, stop. And I was like, they didn't like me, but that's how auditions went. And they was like, hey, no, don't go anywhere. They're like, you're good, you're good. Like, your voice is too good for this, blank group. I'm like, wow, that's how they felt about it. So, needless to say, they signed me on the spot to a 360 deal, and that was my first recording contract that I had. It was a sub-label for Sony called Wake Up Records, owned by Gutman Sitzer, Ben Schrader, and Robert Girding. And I was assigned to work with them as my executive producers. And that's how my first record came out, called And Then Came Enin. And the reason they named, because I wanted the album to be named after the first single, Here I Am Again, on my own. And they were like, no, we're going to call this album And Then Came Enin, because before you, there was no other artist like you. I was like, wow, that's a big mantra to handle, But they thought so much of me as an artist because I came in the door. They had met many artists. Of course, they would primarily get their soul artists from the military, because everybody was, going over to Europe trying to be a star, And they found a lot of their artists from the military, and it was like after many people that we worked with, and you have soul, and they was wondering, they were trying to dissect me, about where does this soul come from, and and it's funny because people in Europe already know about Clarksdale, Mississippi, and growing up there, I was like, just want out, but they already knew about the home of the blues, and at Berklee College of Music, I remember seeing Clarksdale, Mississippi, W.C. Handy, all in the books, and people of the North were learning about the town that we despised, because of dire poverty. Like nothing good could come out of this thing, and then you see movies with the crossroads on it and talking about Clarksdale, Mississippi, and we're like, what, this? You know what I'm saying? That taught me the value of where it come from. I'm like, well, maybe we had something there. Maybe, my dad and my mom came from there. It can't be that bad. They gave me the gift of music and song. So, maybe I need to rediscover my roots while I'm doing this and make that the value system of what I bring into art. And I'm like, wow, I'm from the home of the blues, Clarksdale. Huh. And so that's what I told him. That's where my soul comes from. And he was like, we knew it. When they started doing the psychology of the music and everything, and it was like, you've got something special, kid. And I'm going, wow, somebody else values that as well. And so that, connected me with Tina Turner and David Bowie and all of these other big artists that I grew up listening to or heard about, and here I am just coming in contact with them haphazardly, through the business of music, and toured there and promoted that album. And I remember my first stint with music itself and understanding the business part of it. I wrote a song, and I wrote it as work for hire, and the song, I won't call the name of the song to protect the rights of the innocent. However, I wrote it, and it became a hit record, and to this day, it's like the second biggest record in the world besides Thriller, for a guy. It was signed to Logic Records. He was an African guy, and they get with him, and I was writing this song, and it was supposed to be an R&B song, and I'm writing it, and they step in the room, and he was like, that's a hit record. I didn't know I had written, my first record, and so long story short, they paid me $40,000 for that one record. And I thought, wow, y'all got ripped. Because I didn't value it. I didn't value the song. I thought I write many of them, And the song went #1 in 11 countries. To this day, when I hear it, I cringe. But, it's a part of this business called music. And so, but that taught me that if I wrote one, and that was what I figured was mediocre. I got 1,000 songs in me, to come to the forefront. So that just taught me how to be a writer. So after that, I began to write more. And I wrote a song for Paris, who discovered my career. Her song went #1 called Promises over Europe. And then my record took off and it charted. And then I figured, I am in a foreign country, way away from everybody. What am I doing? Because I went over there to do one thing, and I'm like, nobody knows me in the United States, and this is, was the whole point of, what good is it if nobody knows me in my home? So I left. I left the industry cold turkey. I did what they call a breach of contract. I was blackballed and nobody went to work with me anymore. I was like, oh my God, at least I won't be unsung, like I could start over, that kind of thing. So I left, and here is again, this is this journey to discover who I am, the whole collective of love, life, and spirituality, who I am as a person, who I am as a professional, who I am as a spiritual person, because, I grew up in the church, but I didn't know God, you know what I'm saying? Everybody thought I did because I grew up in church. And so I learned the value of the difference between being a real Christian and being a churchgoer or somebody that grew up in church, that kind of thing. So in that, I had to explore more into life and into my professional part of it. So I came back to Fresno after the military and all of that. And I started from scratch. I began to sing in bands and do talent shows, the same thing I was doing when I left, and trying to rediscover who ENIN Perryman is, just like I'm doing now, bringing this, what I've learned and gained. All of this started, that road, that journey started from this point on. And so in that journey, I mentioned the young lady, Tanya, who I met, who was Eazy-E's first cousin from Fresno, and ended up finding her again, signing to her as one of her artists, or Music Exposure Entertainment. And they started my whole career all over again. Here we are, working with different artists and trying to develop a demo record to go in. And of course, I had the music that I'd done at Sony before back in Europe, but it was a different genre. So here I am coming in back to where I really wanted to be. Instead of doing techno music, I wanted to do R&B, soul, stuff that really resonated from my heart and who I am as coming from blues and gospel. And so here we go, love, life, and spirituality all over again, and starting it all over again. And that was the first shot across the bow. So here I am in 1997. We are getting ready to sign a deal at Motown. Vita Sparks was the A&R director at that time, and we'd set up for Monday after the American Music Awards to go to that event to sign and to start my whole career. I mean, meeting Gerald Levert, and he was going to produce, meeting Heavy D, he was going to do a cameo on, and this is before he actually took over Motown. Meeting Andre Harrell, who was coming into Motown as the CFO of Motown at that time. And I don't know if you remember, there was this soundtrack, You Will Know, from Jason Lyric, and it had won an award. And so they had gotten everybody there, Stokely, all my peers, Leah, all these people were backstage. And I remember meeting Brandy and Ray J for the first time, and I'm doing it, Little Richard, and I'm like, oh, I'm like borrowing stuff. I'm like, one day, rest his soul, man. That guy was so genuine and original. And then, of course, Mary J. Blige and all these other people that I grew up listening to in R&B and soul. Now, because I had known a whole bunch of people over there, and just rock and techno and stuff. In Europe, it was a whole different gamut. But here I am now, meeting people in the United States that either could put me on, we could work together, or that were in R&B and doing it currently. And in the 90s was a very changing and volatile time for musicians and music, period, because we hadn't gotten to the era of digital streaming and all of this stuff. The records were still being sold in stores and all of this stuff. So this is the transition that was getting ready to happen that a lot of people were coming into. And so at that time, I'd seen a lot of, met a lot of people that night, and I remember being thrust to center stage in 1997, and here I am, all my peers, Prince, everybody. And I'm like doing the Jason Lyrics, we're doing the Kumbaya, whatever, the curtain call here, and I'm in the middle of this the biggest point in my career and in my life. So I'm at crossroads here, no pun intended, with Clarksdale. And here I'm on my own crossroad, and of course, Vita Sparks was supposed to be at A&R. But subsequently, around that same time, she left. A whole bunch of stuff was going wrong, right and wrong at the same time. It was a transitional period, I think, for a lot of artists, because here are Prince is changing his name to the Symbol, and here I am having this spiritual epiphany, and of course, I decided to give it up to start this spiritual journey. So I lived, loved life. And now I'm on the spiritual component of my journey. And I'm going, God, whatever you want.
Hey, this is the new single, Waiting on You. It did a lot of things that we didn't think it was going to do. And now it's charting on R&B and gospel charts. And I thank God, because God's music has no boundaries. If we stayed locked up in the church, nobody would ever be saved. Huh? Waiting on You.
Love, life, and spirituality. When I sat down to write this album, and this is, I'm believing one of the best albums that I've ever done, mainly because it culminates everything that I've learned from the experiences of the military, from developing into a young artist, to taking all of those life lessons that I'd learned, discovering God in my life and transforming into a grown man and finishing college and being able to do all of those things, getting into radio and all that. So all those things really pointed me back to this direction. Like, you need to get in the studio and record your story. Love, life, and spirituality, this documentary. This is my journey.
And y'all know my cousins are here tonight supporting me, glory to God. We were taught that, because we didn't have anything, sometimes we would wear our jeans over and over again and hand them down from big sisters. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Amen. And we iron those things, and y'all know what starch is. We starch those hands, and we go to church. And we give God our best.
I know your struggle, and I know where you come from, and I know the things that you went through, and I am personally really proud of the accomplishments that you have accomplished.
Thank you, cuz.
And where you're taking your life. I'm proud of you.
Thank you, cuz. I appreciate that.
A lot of people need to hear what you went through and how you got through.
Amen. Yes.
I've always been your biggest fan.
For real, she was there with me at Bedroom Eyes, and I was like, oh, I am so nervous. My cousin is outside, and I got sheets falling from the club. Exactly. And she was right there. Y'all pardon me. But she was right there and encouraging me and all the time. This is, every song that I wrote on here tells a specific story of a specific time in my life where there was a change and there were things that were happening, from the love life, from going into waiting on you, waiting on this to happen, all these years coming full circle, going from being blackballed to finding a career again, and to leaving that career, finding spirituality for myself, understanding what life was really about, then coming back to my audience who were still waiting there for me. Funny thing, this all started, I was in a small town called Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'm trying to figure out what I was going to do. Am I going to start a church? God, what you want me to do? I'm here, I'm ready. I'm sitting on the thing, just trying to contemplate life, trying to figure out what it is, where am I going from here? And didn't know that we were going to have a pandemic and that all of the world was going to change, the music industry was going to change, the business. I figured, I'm too old, I done all that stuff. I got to get back in there and do it again. But this time, give them everything that, bring them into your journey. Show them everything that I've taught you about life, love, life, and spirituality. Bring it home. Tell them that you can make it. Give them hope. And like I said, we wrote the single Pandemic, not knowing that we would be literally in a pandemic. I had that song already written in my coffer, and we were wrapping the whole CD up, and I was like, you know what? I got this song called Pandemic. I was like, we're in one, so let's see what will happen. We went in and in 2 takes, we finished it, and the engineer was like, this is it. And I'm like, no, not this is it, like Michael. No, I'm kidding. This is the beginning. This is the song that we should present for such a time as this. And I'm like, yeah, let's roll with it. And it was the finishing touches off of Love, Life, Spirituality. And the title track just came so easy. I consorted with the producer back in 2019 about the title track. He just sent me the music. And when I heard the music, I was like, that's it. That's the track, and we came out with the lyrics of all of the power is in your hands. All of the dreams you dreamed in life, come on now and take your brother's hand. So all the dreams that I had dreamed in life, now God was saying, now take your brother's hand and give him hope. leave them out of the pandemic. Let them know that this doesn't have to be this way always. While you're in this, discover yourself. And the whole lyric of the pandemic song is talking about rediscovering love. Some people have been married to folks, they're just discovering, like, I don't even know this person, because you've been working, you got children, you got all of this stuff, 4 or 5 businesses, 3 cars to manage and all this stuff, and you forgot to come back to love. And you have to rediscover your first love. And the same thing was like when I was going through my little transition coming to the military, I had to find who I was. All of that went into making these records, saying, bring people to the point where they can understand that you have to reinvent yourself. You have to change with the times. If a pandemic comes, my grandmother used to always tell me, if life hands you lemons, cut that joint up and make lemonade out of it. Make some lemon pie out of it. Don't see it as all bitter. Make the bitter into the street. Add a little sugar to it. Mix that thing up. Make it what it should be. Wear your mask. Do all of those things, and evolve into what you can be. And this is why we wrote Love, Life, and Spirituality. When negativity comes in life, you gotta let that mess go. You gotta let it go. You gotta reinvent. You gotta come up with the positive. Defeat the positives, the negatives with the positives. The positives are always going to give you the answer. And when I found for myself that spirituality, that light was God, the positivity, whatever religion you are, it's not even about that. It's about discovering the God in you and finding out what is the purpose for my life. Why am I here? What can I do while I'm here? Who can I affect while I'm here? And I guarantee you, in those questions that you ask, you're going to find those answers that you need. And those answers that you need are on the ones that are going to be plausible for your life going forward. Love, life, and spirituality will take you into the future of what you will become.